Except Nate. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, where's Nate? On vacation?
Out today.
I think he's off. He did email me, but he said he's not going to be at the TAC today. So
I think he might be
he's
hunting.
on annual leave.
All right, with that, I think we will go ahead and get started. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 1:32. And with that, we'll jump right into roll call. Nate is out today. I'm Nick Hall. Will be standing in for him today as chair. John Wennis.
Here.
All right. Ann Dunham.
Here.
Rick Barrett.
Here.
Jess McNeely.
Here.
Dan Folk.
Present.
Jeff Bowman.
Here.
Greg Mace.
Present.
Ed Stillings.
Here.
And then for Metro Plan, we got Jeff.
Here.
David Wessel.
Here.
And Rosie.
Present.
All right. That'll take us straight to public comment. Is it at this point in time, if there's any members of the public that would like to speak, please go ahead and unmute yourselves. Hearing none, that'll take us to approval of last meeting's minutes from September 23rd. Is there any discussion on the minutes from last time? All right. Those in favor of approving last meeting's minutes, say aye.
Did we make a motion first to approve?
Oh, yeah, sorry. You're right.
Yeah, and if so, I'll make a motion to approve the September 23rd meeting minutes without any changes.
I'd second that. Oh, sorry, Ann.
Go ahead, Jeff.
This is Jeff Bauman. I'd second that motion.
All right. Motion by John Wennis, second by Jeff Bowman to approve the minutes from last time without any edits. Those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. That takes us to the consent agenda, which I don't believe we have any items under here. Is that correct, Rosie?
Correct.
Okay,
That's correct.
thank you. That will take us to general business. And before we begin here, I would like to quickly ask, I guess, Jeff and David on this one, is there anything we need to reorder before jumping into it, or is it good to go in?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you chairing today and Nate's absence. And I think the agenda's okay. I rearranged it. We did just a few days ago. But Dave, is there anything you want to change?
No, it all looks good.
Oh, perfect.
I would just point out that it is a very full agenda. So I think we're going to move as quickly as we can on some items so you can go deep on the projects you want to.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jeff. And with that, will you take us away on item A, federal funding update?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, members of the TAC, the purpose of this staff report is just to provide a brief update on pending grant requests. And it ties to our work plan where our goal is to bring in 2.1 million additional funds over the next 5 years. And with the background, we will be talking about the build grant later today. The upshot is, as most people know, the region has applied for 4th Street funding for the past 5 years, hasn't been received. The project's going to be done. So the question comes, what do we do next? So later in this meeting, we'll engage the TAC in that discussion. 5339 and 5307 funding. There was a grant submitted for $19 million. And I heard from ADOT just yesterday that they don't think they'll have an answer until perhaps after the first of the year due to staffing shortages. And in terms of federal stimulus funding, I don't have a lot of news to report. Everybody is guessing what's going to happen with the transition. If there's going to be additional funding related to COVID-19 or infrastructure. I think many people still remain optimistic. It's safe to say that there will be opportunity for funding, but right now there's nothing really tangible that I'm aware of that we could sink our teeth into here today. So I'm available for questions, of course, but that concludes my report.
Any questions for Jeff? All right, well, thank you, Jeff. With that, let's move on to item B, the 2021 calendar. Jeff?
Yes, actually, I think it's going to be Rosie. Rosie, you going to take us on this one?
Sure. What you'll see, Jeff, would you slide down to the actual calendar, please? So what we've put together here is just a draft public meeting calendar, similar to, well, the same as what we did last year. Although truthfully, the meeting location isn't exactly accurate. But what this does is sets a date and time for 2021 for a TAC meeting. Last year at this time when we reviewed the calendar, the TAC had requested to change the meeting time from 1 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. as an example of changes. We have, it looks like 9 regular meetings on the calendar and the strategic advance, so you can plan ahead for our meetings. And with that, if anyone doesn't have any questions or comments or any concerns about this date and time, I mean, we're curious to hear if you have any concerns. This is really just a review, something to put on our website, we can share with our partners and for public outreach. But I'd be welcome to answer any questions you may have about the calendar.
Is there any discussion for the upcoming calendar?
Do we need a motion to adopt or a signal of support from this group?
I think, yes, we would request the TAC at least acknowledge that the date and time will work into 2021.
The recommendation is, yeah, for a staff adoption. So I think we will need a motion.
Can I ask one clarifying question? This is Anne.
Go ahead, Ann.
Is there a good reason to have a TAC meeting on the 27th of January if there's a joint meeting on the 3rd? Or I know I think the TIP adoption schedule later in the agenda has that as a key. I think in January there's a key date there, but I'm just asking for, you probably looked at that when you put this together.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that. Mr. Chairman and Ms. Deno, I appreciate the question. I think I look at it as we will not have another TAC meeting until January 27th because there's no TAC meeting in December. So having this one here is at least a placeholder because we might need to run through some things with the TAC prior to the strategic advance. I would say we can certainly, cancel it if there's not a compelling need and save everybody some time. But for now, I would like to keep it there so that people could come in if we needed it to keep things organized.
Thank you. I make a motion to approve the schedule as shown.
Wennes will second the motion.
All right. Motion by Ann Deno, seconded by John Wennes to approve the calendar as shown for the 2021 year. All those in favor, aye.
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 Those opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right, that will take us to item C, TIP amendment for bicycle and pedestrian projects. Jeff, you're listed on this one as well.
Yes. Yes. All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the TAC, this item, I'm recommending that the TAC support a recommendation to award a $50,000 competitive mini grant to the city of Flagstaff. And I got to tell you, I think I've got my recommendation wrong on the staff report. So excuse me for a minute. Okay. The hesitation I have here is I think we might have to amend the tip. And maybe that's another item in this agenda. Dave and I have been thinking through the best way to structure this. In any case, we do want to award $50,000 competitive mini grant to the city of Flagstaff for bicycle and pedestrian projects. Yes, and asking you to support the related transportation improvement program amendment. And thanks for bearing with me on my clunkiness here. So one of the things that was adopted in our strategic work plan was to look carefully at providing $50,000 mini grants. We went through that process this year. The TAC was involved in designing how the process was structured. We sent it out. We received an application from the city of Flagstaff for the Kinlani Sidewalk project. And we discussed some issues, and Dave is more expert on this than I, and he might need to jump in and answer some questions. But how do we make this work with accounting and with funding flow with ADOT and with the city of Flagstaff? Essentially, we want to show that we're moving funding into the TIP, moving $50,000 of surface transportation block grant funds into the transportation improvement plan, moving it to the city of Flagstaff so the city can spend that money down on these projects. And by amending the TIP, I think we're in place to do that. I also know that Dave has been talking with finance at the city of Flagstaff to figure out the mechanics of the funding flow. And Dave, I want to ask you if you have any additional news on that.
Yeah, just, I'm sorry, I've got a bunch of feedback there. Hopefully that's better. So the city is going to do a HERF exchange with these funds, and that goes through the ADOT local project agency section. Jennifer Henderson, I see, is on the line with us, which is great. And the HERF exchange gives us a lot of advantages for managing projects, but also needs to comply with the STBG eligibility. So we need to account for these HERF exchange funds that they are in fact being spent on these eligible roadways. Working with the city and Martin have identified the fact that there are more than enough roadways in their program that are eligible that can use these funds, and have been in touch with Brandy Suda regarding to how we may present that accounting. And the recommendation to the city is that when they apply for HERF exchange, that they detail their accounting methodology so that the LPA section can pass that on to ADOT's finance section and hopefully get approval. But I would not be surprised if we have further conversations with ADOT on this down the road.
Well said, John. I don't have anything further to add on that.
Mr. Chair, this is John Wennis. Hey, Jen, I think that was Dave Wessel that was talking about the project. This is John. I did have a question for clarification. Are there portions of the sidewalk project that will not be eligible or will not be used, or is that getting a little bit too much detail?
John, this is Dave. Just so it's about, at this point, they're still assembling the project list, but it's about $300,000 plus in terms of the program of projects that they'll do. And it's right at this point, it's about 50-50 eligible roads and non-eligible roads. So they'll have more than enough match on the eligible roadway side to meet that $50,000, to absorb that $50,000, and more than enough roadway to spend it on. And then the challenge, if you will, that the city needs to rise to is how to show in their accounting and invoicing, perhaps at the contractor, perhaps through phasing, however they might do it, that in fact it was the eligible roadways that received the HERF exchange dollars. And so those details need to be worked out, but will be included, or I'm recommending they be included in the HERF exchange application.
Oh, okay, that's great. Thank you, Dave. That's a good explanation. That helps me understand it a little better. Appreciate it.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think we're looking for a motion if anyone is willing to provide it.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Dan. First, I do want to thank everybody for supporting this mini grant. Thank you, Jeff, for moving forward with this opportunity. I want to thank Martin Ince and Jeff Bauman, who I believe put our application together, identified the project. And I think this is a great project. It has all the elements that I had in mind when talking about doing this mini grant opportunity, which, you know, it's serving a student population, their access to school, their access to transit, a route that they already use but is unpaved. So very pleased that we were able to put this together, and I appreciate everyone's support. With that, I'll make a motion to award the grant and amend the tip as required.
This is Ann. I will second. I think you're muted, Nick.
Thank you, Ann. Motion by Dan Folk, second by Ann Dunno. And just a quick question for Jeff before we move to a vote on this, that can the TAC award this, or does this have to go to the E-Board for award?
The E-Board.
Okay, so should we amend the recommendation or just to take this to the E-Board, or can we?
Yeah, I can clarify my motion. So the motion would be that TAC recommends that the E-Board award this grant, mini grant application, and amend the tip as needed. Is that better?
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
Mr.
right.
Chair, just another point of discussion, if I may.
Sure, go ahead, Rick.
This is Rick. Thank you. I too want to echo Dan's sentiments of thank you to the Metro Plan. I think this is a worthy project. We appreciate the award. And Dave Wessel, thank you for your explanation of the HERF exchange. Let me know if I can help in any way, shape, or form. You know, there are clearly eligible roadways in our system, so I don't see that as being a difficult hurdle. And with that, that's all I have to add. Over.
All right, thank you, Rick.
Mr. Hall, I have a quick follow-up to Rick's question or comment. You know, this is a great, it is a really great display of coordination and effort with Metro Plan, and really and Mountain Line also appreciated the opportunity to consider the grant. We definitely support the city's application. One of the reasons we just weren't able to submit for this particular mini grant is we didn't have in our current budget the match. So one of the, I guess, questions for Metro Plan is if you're thinking this might be part of your another annual fiscal ongoing opportunity, then we can plan accordingly in our budgets.
Thank you.
Is it going to be?
Comment there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and my intention is that we have adequate funding to continue this each year. So if member agencies want to budget for it, I think that would be fantastic.
Thanks for the clarification. And with that, I will second the motion by Mr. Folk.
All right. The motion by Mr. Folk is to recommend for E-Board approval of the award for $50,000 to the City of Flagstaff. seconded by Ann Dunno. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item D, the Regional Transportation Plan update. Dave, do you want to take that away?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a very brief item. The TAC and the Executive Board have already reviewed and approved the scope, but in further discussions with various stakeholders, we're finding that coordination with the regional plan needs a little more focus, as well as preparation and support of meeting the climate emergency that the city has declared. So we're working on refining that scope and kind of deferring its release in an RFP or request for proposal until after we've assembled a steering committee and let the steering committee take a look at that scope one more time. It may be an item on the advance agenda, but it should be shortly after the advance that we expect to release the RFP. Now, look to Jeff Milebeck to see if he has anything that he'd like to add to that.
Thank you, Dave. Just want to reiterate, I am a little bit, we're going to miss our time frame. The goal that we established was to have the team assembled, the contract out by December 31st. The reason we're missing it is completely my responsibility, and wanting to convene a steering committee and get that group together, even to look at the scope of work. So that's going to take a bit longer to run through the whole process. I feel confident that I really believe it's the right way to go, because I want to make sure we have an inclusive process, and the product we end up providing is the product that this community needs. We are by no means behind schedule. We're just behind a deadline that we set. So I think that's it. Thanks, Dave.
Discussion? All right.
Mr. Chair, yeah, I would like to make a comment or discussion, please.
Go ahead, Rick.
Jeff Milebeck, I want to thank you. I understand everything that you just said and very much appreciate the way you put it. And I think you're exactly correct in that the inclusivity is going to be very important from the very onset of this process. So again, well done. Over.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And did you have something to add?
I think Rick beat me to it, but I concur, and I think it's a good idea to pause and assemble the committee and really have a clear scope of work for your vendor with the partners' input. Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate the support.
Any further discussion? All right, that was just an information item. That'll take us to item E, Regional Transportation Model Update. Dave, you want to take us away on that one?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to share my screen here in a moment. What I'm looking for from the TAC today is an endorsement of the Regional Transportation Demand Model for a variety of planning purposes. And the TAC, being a technical product, the TAC being our technical committee, it's going to stop here, but we will inform the board of your actions. So I'm going to share my screen, which means I'm going to stop other people from sharing and go to my PowerPoint. Okay, can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes.
Excellent. So this is I'm going to report on how well the model has calibrated, which is very well, and based on that calibration, looking for the endorsement I referenced. The activities we're looking to endorse the project for are those on the screen, ranging from regional transportation planning, which we traditionally do, now transit planning included in this list, down to intersection impacts and design inputs. And hopefully I can demonstrate to you that the model is calibrated well enough to serve its purposes. The calibration really took place along all steps of the model: chip generation, distribution, mode choice, and trip assignment, and calibrated fairly well for all of those steps. Under trip generation, we do productions and attractions. And the goal here in this step is that your productions will match your attractions. You go through a balancing process because they do need to be exact, but even prior to balancing, you can see that we were within 3% on our productions and attractions. So it's a really strong showing there. On the generation process, these inputs to the model were really checked against primary data sources, including the Trip Diary Survey, National Household Trip Survey, and the American Community Survey at the block level. And an auto-sufficiency model was put together using that data, including our 3D, or its design, density, and diversity score to compute auto-sufficiency. And really that auto-sufficiency is what drives mode choice, the later step in the model. And these were again checked against the ACS and visually inspected as well. As you can see, this map was being produced. On the attraction side, we're using land uses gathered from the assessor, and we have a vacancy rate that's applied to these land uses for every traffic analysis zone. We checked with economic vitality on those vacancy rates, and we actually purchased air DNA data to look at second home rentals to help adjust some of those vacancy rates. So the trip generation, we think, calibrates very well. The next step is distribution or destination choice, where these trips go. And we look at this by trip purpose, such as home-based work, shopping, university trips, trip attractions, where the employers, retail, and other things are, as well as characteristics of the trip maker, and the journey they take, including travel time, costs, other delays, and the 3D score of the destination. And putting that together and calibrating it against trip lengths by purpose in the household survey, census data on work trips, and then streetlight data, which is our cell phone location-based data. We have a really strong calibration here. A typical model will come up with an R-square, a test of accuracy of about 0.6, and the Metro Plan model is at 0.72. So we're explaining about 72% of all trips. And if you think about, hey, I'm going out to eat, and tonight I'm going to McDonald's, or tonight I'm going to Thai food, getting to 72% is a really strong calibration. And to illustrate this a little bit more, we compared origins and destinations by district. It's a little easier to see here. And you can see the districts on the left of the screen with a close-up of the downtown, and then a plot diagram of how the model versus streetlight look. And you can see they hover around that best fit line very well. Another way to look at this, and there's this table on the left showing the model versus streetlight for origins and destinations for all of those. And then on the top right, you see a comparison of the model to streetlight in this kind of 3D vision. You can kind of see this, this left side matches up pretty well, but there are some aberrations on the right side here, where some of the streetlight is a little bit stronger than the model estimates. And I say a little bit because I want you to look at the scale here, where we're looking at 0.5% and 1% over here. So even though some of these look rather dramatic, it's really a small scale. So on a destination choice, as you look at the table, you look at the graphs and look at that 73.73 R square, Again, on the destination choice, it's looking very good. Here's another great illustration of how good it's looking. Part of destination choice is making sure we get trip length correct. And this is just kind of a visual inspection, shows a very close correlation between the model and the streetlight data. So we're looking very strong on destination choice. The next step is mode choice, where we're using a variety of means to determine mode share. So there's the trip diary, mode share by purpose, and there were some adjustments needed as we started looking at the bicycles more closely. Thinking that was perhaps overestimated a bit in the diary. Journey to work data from the census and the onboard transit survey. And again, this mode choice went down to the trip purposes, and we have, I think, 6 of them now. Characteristics of the trip maker and the journey to influence that mode choice. And you can see here in this table, I'll bring your attention first to the overall estimate on the far right column. And you can see we're very, very close. And then if you think about how this breaks down across these trip purposes, and you can kind of eyeball the distribution here between the targets on the bottom that we're shooting for and how close we came with the mode share on the top. Again, I'd say we're doing exceptionally well here, and really pleased with this new capacity within the model and how well it's being reflected. So the next step in the model is trip assignment. You know, we know where how many trips there are, we know where they're going. Now the question is, how do they get there? And so we compare what the model estimates to our 187 vehicle counts. And we have 3 columns here: percent error, percent VMT, and percent root mean square error. And all are performing very well. You want those numbers as small as possible, and you want the percent error and the percent VMT error to be very close. And if they are close, it means you've got good volumes and good trip lengths. And as the previous slide, earlier slideshow, we do have very good trip lengths. And as a means of comparison, you can see how Phoenix compares to what we're doing. In Phoenix, this is the Maricopa Association of Government model, and they are considered one of the national leaders in regional transportation modeling. So we're doing very well by comparison. You can see our overall RMSE is about 19%. Here's how it compares to some other models. And for regions of our size, that 20 to 30% is more typical for an RMSE. And the fact that we're below that 20% really puts us in really good company there. We are looking at intersections. The calibration for peak hours is not quite complete, but here's one at 4th and Cedar, another at Ponderosa Parkway and Historic Route 66. You can see, you know, AM and PM for both of those. Here the numbers start getting a little more dramatic in terms of the variation. Some of that to do to that kind of small base model where you have, it doesn't take but a few trips to really swing things wildly. But it calibrates actually fairly well at the intersection level. And we're going to do a little more investigation into this. But we think for reasons of intersection planning, looking at order of magnitude changes, even at the turn level, turn movement level, is appropriate. Then we get into transit trip assignment. This was calibrated to a fairly extensive onboard transit survey. And you can see how well it matches down to the route level. And if you might recall from an earlier slide where we're talking about over 700,000 trips a day, when we're getting down to the ability to capture fairly accurately 700 trips, I think we're doing very well. I'll bring your attention to the highlighted areas for Route 10 and NAU trips. These are there's a lot of overlap in the service area there. And so I think if we capture these two, sorry, there's somebody at the door and the dogs are saying hello. My apologies. If the two of these combined are accurate, I think we're capturing the trip making patterns there pretty well. But as you know, we'll need to pay attention to that as we're looking at trip planning for that. So as we look into the endorsements that we're looking for, long range planning, I think we're in better situated than we have been, and we've been in good condition in the past. But volumes, mode share, land use, and investment scenarios. Now we can do transit planning. We can do it twice apparently, which is we can get down to looking at new routes, the effects of frequency changes, introduction of new stops, and do the type of transit planning we've never been able to do before. Active transportation planning, we're now doing bicycle assignment. We're still honing in on the assignment calibration for bikes, but I believe we can do program level investments and investigations of larger connectivity issues. I don't think we can model a crosswalk, but we should be able to look at something like a new underpass or overpass and see some effects of connectivity influence on active transportation. Our traffic impact or transportation impact analysis is going to be improved because now we've always been able to do trip generation, distribution, and assignment. Our mode share has been good, but now it's going to be much better. Internal capture has been good. It's going to be much better. And then these intersection impacts, especially be able to look at them from a time of day perspective, is going to, I think, help quite a bit. Pavement management is, we've always had volumes, and now we have truck volumes. And so this contributes to better understanding of forecasted pavement conditions. We have a truck assignment piece now where we can, which is going to contribute to, as I said, pavement management, but also emissions. Does require some post-processing for that. And then finally, intersection design inputs for turn movements, where we can look at growth factors, changes, the level of change projected in the model as applied to actual turn movement counts. So there's some improved capacity there, as well as I mentioned before, the time of day differences. So that's the model, the calibration, and what we're looking for is an endorsement of the model for the uses as presented.
Thank you very much, Dave. Discussion.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead, Rick.
Dave, you had just mentioned in regard to pavement maintenance truck volumes. Are buses included with trucks, or is bus a different category?
A bus would be a different category, but we should be able to get bus volumes. I would probably just go straight to the source if the bus volumes were in question, but we should be able to pull those for the model too.
Okay, so yeah, that's my ultimate question. Is bus included in the model?
Right, we actually assign trips. So you look at frequency and you should be able to calculate the number of buses.
And is it broken out separately as its own category?
Right, so you are assigning, well, I'll have to look into that, Rick, because I know we're assigning ridership. We're assigning person trips to routes, and we know what the frequency is. So you would be able to back into the actual number of buses.
Yeah, that would be interesting data to know, like the trucks, how buses in their own category are affecting pavement maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Chair, I have a question for Dave.
Go ahead, Ann.
Or a comment, maybe. Thanks for the presentation. I mean, done a lot of work to develop the model and refine it. And I appreciate also Rick's question about bus impacts basically on our roadways. You know, there's been some discussion, informal discussion about that between staff over the last few years. My question is actually more about the coordination of how this model might be used with the RTP and working with your analysis in that process, because I just sat through a climate action presentation to Mountain Line Board. I listened in this morning, and you know, one of the goals of that plan is to, I think I'm quoting it correctly, to get to net zero by 2030, and they have, I believe, an objective of trying to reduce vehicle miles traveled by 50%, thereabouts. I could be misquoting the exact objective of how they are trying to get there, but I think this is all related. So I'm wondering from your perspective how this model could be used to make projections with certain policy changes on how, what that mode shift looks like to get us to reach that objective or goal.
Thank you, Ann, for the question, Mr. Chair. So the model can be used in a variety of ways. One, we can test land use projections and land use patterns and how that affects VMT. We can change the pedestrian and bicycle environment to see how that affects mode share and access to transit. We can certainly play with transit frequencies and new routes. One of the things that we may need to do, and this is part of the scoping work that I referred to earlier, is kind of take the cap off. There are coefficients that are essentially limiting factors, and we may need to take the cap off on some of those or adjust those limiting factors, and then have some variable conversations with the public and decision makers about what's reasonable about lifting the cap and how do we get there. There are what I refer to as policy hacks, where we can try to approximate, maybe TDM, travel demand management measures, and what that might do for, our pedestrian transit and bicycle level of service, or what they might do to a trip rate. All of that's going to require some discussion and vetting on the technical side, as well as transparency to explain what we've done. Does that answer your question, Ann?
Thank you. Any further questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, I have a question and comment.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Dave, thanks for the presentation today, and thanks even more, I guess, for inviting us to was it 2 or 3 hours we spent Monday? I think a couple people on the call maybe were in on that presentation of the model. Really good work. Consultant clearly has a lot of experience in this realm, and now you do too. I'm looking forward to the new model. It looks like it's an improvement on what we've used in the past, a few more bells and whistles and levers and knobs and all sorts of things. So that's great. Will you talk a little bit about, are you formalizing a process for requests for information? Or, I mean, in the past, we've just reached out to you generally and asked for things. And I know you talked a little bit about that on Monday, and it might be good to talk about that a little bit more. How we're going to get to you, asking for you to run different scenarios and all sorts of that kind of stuff.
Right here in my ivory tower, you can.
I'm not sure I can get there. Yeah.
And I think we made some comments in jest, but it's a good point. This model does have a lot more bells and whistles, and it's consequently it's going to take a little more adjusting, I think, to make sure that we're capturing scenarios correctly. And so frankly, it's still early days. Need to learn more about what's under the hood, where those bells and whistles are located, and how to adjust them. But I could speculate that we may need to have a more formal request process, just because that could have an impact on work program. I think it's kind of worth noting for the broader group that, Metro Plan is now the only person with a TransCAD agency with a TransCAD license. The city no longer maintains theirs. So we are kind of the one and only, and therefore I guess one-stop shop. And we may find that there are times similar to what the city has done on past TIAs, where you farm out some things to a consultant just to be a little more timely. And I think we can discuss about how to make the model available in those situations.
Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
All right, is there any further discussion? Okay. And I believe Dave is looking for a motion on this one.
Yes, please.
This is Anne. I'll make a motion to endorse the regional model update.
This is Jeff. I'd second that.
All right. Motion by Ann Dono to endorse the regional demand update or model update, and second by Jeff. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay. That'll take us on to item F, the FY21 through 22 TIP and WP adoption schedule. Dave?
Yes, very quickly again. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a similar process to what we went through last year. We did this, I believe, in January, so hopefully we're just getting a little better jump on this. And so this is the adoption schedule, including when we will go out to advertise. And what this does is allow staff a little better preparation time. So for the TIP, we do a call for projects as well as call for comments, and for the work program, we're adopting our next 2-year work program. And so we'll go out in terms of a call for comments. And so you can see the adoption schedule on the staff reports for both the TIP and the work program. And with the adoption of the schedule, the staff can then act on this as we move forward. So with that, we're looking for a motion to recommend adoption of the schedule.
All right, is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair, this is John Winnes. I'm just taking a look, Dave, at the details here, and it looks like you've included the work plan on the 2-year cycle. We do have, I think Ed Stillings on the meeting today. Ed, do you have any input on the possible review of the work plan this year in maybe a virtual format? I'm just curious.
Hadn't really thought about it. We'll have to have a conversation with FTA on how we want to. I mean, we'll definitely want to obviously look and review the work plans before we can approve them.
Right. Okay. I know we were just kind of jumping into COVID last March and everything.
Right. And well, we were in the second year as well, so we didn't do the visiting all the MPO. But yeah, under the current scenario, I don't see any kind of an in-person review. I think we'd have to give some thought to some kind of virtual effort.
Makes sense. Okay. Yeah, thanks for showing that other schedule there, Nick. Let's see. From what I'm seeing, that looks really good, Dave. Thanks for putting that together. That looks like it coincides with what we're going to need for timing for reviews and approvals. So,
great.
Yeah, looks good. Thank you.
Any further comments?
Nick, I have a quick question about the process and timing.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is Ann. Actually, it's a question from Mountain Line to MetroPlan staff about the 5305. We're trying to see if and when, how we get that into the tip. So I don't have concerns so much about the overall tip schedule you presented, but just trying to understand how that will fit into the process.
And Mr. Chair, we kind of have been through this a couple times. I'm glad Ed's on the phone. Maybe he can confirm. And John and I talked through this as well. So as far as 5305E planning funds are concerned, our reading of the regs is that they have to be in the work program. They may be in the tip. And at this point, the work program, and Jeff Meilbeck can speak to this a little more directly, the work program has funding addressed in it and talks about general transit planning. So we think we're covered for the grant that you have proposed or have submitted through us for that purpose. So maybe Jeff Meilbeck can confirm or add a little detail to that and then see if we've addressed your concern.
Yes, that's correct. I have nothing to add. Thank you.
And did that address your concern?
Yes. So my understanding it's identified in your UPWP, so we're covered. Right.
Right.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Okay, and Dave's looking for a motion on this one as well.
Mr. Chair, this is Rick Barrett. I would move to, let me make sure I get it correct. I would move to recommend the Metro Plan TAC endorses the adoption schedule of FY 22 through 26 TIP and the FY 22 through 23 UPWP.
This is Ann, I'll second.
All right, motion on the table by Rick to endorse the adoption of the schedule for the FY 22 through 26 TIP and FY 22 through 23 UPWP, seconded by Ann. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries. All right, on to our next item, G, for the US DOT ATC MTD grant update. Dave? You're on mute, Dave.
Our vast listening audience, that's the Advanced Transportation and Congestion Mitigation or Management Technology Deployment Grant. And I think before I step into my presentation, I believe Jeff Meilbeck would like to have a short presentation explaining how we got here. So Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Dave and members of the TAC. I would like to give a short presentation that has been shared with ADOT staff and City of Flagstaff staff. Some of you have seen it, but just to keep everyone on board, I'm going to run through it quickly. And if it's too fast, I'm just going to ask you to slow me down. But I don't think you need that. You need that much. I just want to make sure you all have the overview. Okay, if anyone can't see it, let me know. Transportation technology grant. It's about planning, funding, and managing the grant. We've talked through this a few times, learned a lot from, Dave and I have learned a lot from talking to ADOT and other TAC members and folks at the city. And really, before we apply for grants, we want to get a commitment from the member agencies at all the required levels to make sure we're pursuing a grant with confidence and in collaboration. And certainly whenever we do this, this particular grant anyway, we want to improve our transportation system. We're looking at leveraging Prop 419 funds to help the city deliver on promises made to voters. And then we want to go through this effort to make sure we're more competitive, that we're more likely to actually get the funding. So we really want to apply the lessons learned. We heard TAC members say, look, we need more advance notice. We need to make sure the local match is budgeted. We need to understand how staff are being impacted by any grant that MetroPlan might write. And we need to make sure our approval processes are being followed. And then we need, commitments from everybody to move forward in confidence. So I'm going to quickly click through our strategic work plan and these fancy graphics and just get to a reminder that I highlighted in yellow, our guiding principles. This concept of shared priorities and aligning goals, advancing projects. And then the other one about really leading multi-jurisdictional projects that are shared member agency priorities. And this particular grant really fits both of those guiding principles. So one of the first purpose is to improve the transportation system. We're looking at smart signals in terms of being more responsive to traffic flow and detection capabilities, and then better communication between signals. And then with infrastructure that goes beyond transportation needs with fiber optic. And then the idea to leverage these 419 funds to deliver on promises made to voters. Our understanding is 419 has about 3 million over 21 years. The grant provides a 50% match. So that could be being $6 million in to do the project. And there's actually 12 million federal possible if more match is available. And then we want to increase grant competitiveness. So to the extent that we can demonstrate local collaboration and coordination, we're going to be more competitive. And of course, we have to document local match and adopt a technology plan. And then make a commitment to a management plan, because the granting agency wants to know that if they're going to give us money, that we can clearly put it to good use and manage it competently. So the idea here that we have shared again with City of Flagstaff and ADOT in a couple of meetings, overlapping circles, the city providing the local match, and then management of the project when the grant is received, ADOT providing in-kind match that we would have to quantify and providing operation support, and MetroPlan being involved in essentially doing the planning, actually writing the grant, and then I put shepherding an IGA or an MOU through some kind of memorializing document so that everybody's commitments of how we're going to honor this grant and get it done can be provided to FHWA. So those are the way the responsibilities kind of line out. It really puts MetroPlan in a place of doing the initial work to get things rolling. And then hopefully the grant comes and the money goes to the City of Flagstaff who hires staff and does the work and coordinates with ADOT to get the project done. And we have some questions to answer. These are things we went through with the city and with ADOT to make sure we're clear. And I can come back to this in the interest of time. I think I'm going to go quickly and put up on the screen. Let's see. This approval worksheet and checklist. And I'm going to kind of wrap up here and turn it over to Dave. And I want to apologize, Dave, if I've messed up your stride in any way with things that you were intending to share. The purpose of this slide is just to make clear that we're trying to capture all of the elements that are required for member agencies to make a really clear decision as to whether or not this is a grant they want. what's the money? What are the impacts? Let's go into this really with eyes wide open and make sure we don't have any surprises down the road.
Yeah, Jeff, oh, don't, look, put that back up there. There we go. Great. Could you go to the, I think it's slide 14, maybe? Yeah, right there, right there.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeff, for the background and the lead in. And really what I have to add is having to do with this technology plan, what we're calling the regional ITS, Intelligent Transportation System strategy. We're looking to do this in-house between now and May, and really using that to identify priorities and costs and really feed the information into both that checklist that Jeff just showed as well as the grant itself. We're looking at this being a plan adopted by Metro Plan with a lot of stakeholder from you all and people you work with. And so hopefully, even though it's adopted by our agency, it's something that you feel is actionable on your part. The plan itself is going to be organized by the eligible technologies in the plan. That's by design to help us with the grant application, both now and perhaps future iterations. And the inputs really into that are the notice of funding opportunity, plans from other agencies, including the statewide IDS architecture. We did interviews with many of you in advance of the last grant attempt. And that's providing a lot of information. There were some great dialogues there. And we look to kind of repeat those and dig deeper into our ITS needs as a region and start working with you to get some of that baseline data on and inventories that we have. Whatever cost information we can put together, we'll do, and probably have some group meetings to really move the consensus and IGA parts of this forward. Brianna Fimbres, our Montalia Fellow, and I have had some very interesting presentations from some upcoming technology applications or vendors. I look forward to sharing some of that information with you and perhaps scheduling demos for larger groups so that we're all informed and can make decisions. But I guess to wrap up and focus back on the grant itself, last year it was due at the end of August. So hopefully by having a plan in place around May, that gives us the chance to really focus in on the grant details. There is a big question mark with the change in administration and whether or not they can hold to last year's schedule or if that will influence the schedule. Just a big question mark at this point in time. And so with that, I'll see if there's any questions.
All right, discussion.
Excellent.
Dave?
Oh, so close. I'm so close.
It's just a comment, really. Mountain Line, as you know, is endeavoring to apply future technology in corridors with transit signal priority. And so this type of grant and technology plan that you're working with partners on, definitely want to be part of that planning process because of those objectives that we've been working on on collective projects that I believe everyone in this room probably is aware of with corridor projects. So just wanted to give you kudos for putting together an actual plan in advance of the grant.
Yeah, thank you, Ann. And I think it will serve us all well, whether it's for this grant project or an aspect of another standalone project that has a technology component where we can point back to this plan and saying, yeah, this is all in our wheelhouse, all something that we expect. Advanced public transportation systems is certainly one of the eligible activities, and we want to address that in the plan. And then as we get down the line and work towards those priorities in the grant itself. We'll see where all these things play out. The Proposition 419 language and the information campaign really points to that smart signals. The smart signals need the fiber technology. So that's kind of where we're obliged to start. And I think as we take a look at what makes a competitive grant, and as Jeff mentioned, what other opportunities for match are out there, we'll have some flexibility to address that grant and make it as strong as possible.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, and I guess I'd like to pause and see if there's comments from TAC members before I say the next thing.
Mr. Chair, this is Rick. I do have a question of Mr. Mildek.
Ed, Rick.
Jeff, I forget what slide it was. I apologize, but it was the slide you were showing in regard to the 3 circles with overlaps.
Yes.
And I had a question in regard to the ADOT circle where it was indicated that ADOT would provide support for operations. And I'm wondering if there is a clarification that can be provided in terms of what was discussed in regards to support versus just responsibility for operation. Is there a distinction there, or am I reading too much into that?
I think, if I may, Jeff, I think there is no distinction there. If the grant, for instance, were to include investments leveraged with city money, but placed onto ADOT facilities, the expectation is that ADOT will be responsible for maintaining and operating those, and we'll have to come up with agreements between the city and ADOT on just how that funding works, but then also the operations themselves, where there's intersections between state and local facilities.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you for that, Dave. That's all.
Yeah, thank you, Dave, and thanks for the question, Rick. I left the grant pursuit worksheet up on the screen, and I just want to point out that this item is a serious overlap with the next item that we're going to get to. This grant pursuit worksheet applies to both. And just a couple of points I would like to make about it. One, in response to the question that Rick Barrett just asked, the answer to that question is exactly why we want to have a memorandum of understanding or an IGA or whatever is required, so that expectations between the member agencies are clear, and we all know what we can expect from each other. And right now, I don't presume to know exactly what those things are, but the point of this is for Dave and I to kind of take the agencies through this process and do the work to line it out, so that I keep saying when the grant does come, because I like to think about it that way. When the grant does come, we know exactly how it's going to flow. The other thing I would say, and it goes to some of the concerns we've heard, and right in the center of this screen, it says federalization cost. What's the percentage and the dollar amount, and perhaps what's the time delay cost? And we want to try to quantify those things. And I want to illustrate the possibilities here with this grant. And correct me, please, Dan or Jeff Bowman or Dave, or Rick, if I've got this wrong. But generally, it's my understanding there's $3 million for this technology in Proposition 419 over 20 years. We looked at what the cost for staff might be to install and project manage and then continue to operate and manage this technology. And it comes out to maybe $150,000 a year, all in. And that pretty much gets to $3 million over 20 years. And the serendipity of the math there is really serendipitous. We didn't plan it that way. But what it says is if we get a grant that can actually, for $3 million, it can actually buy the tech, well, then the city can use their Prop 419 money to pay for staff to manage the tech. And then conversely, if staffing is an issue sometimes within agencies, if a grant can be provided to pay for staff, sometimes agencies have an easier time approving grants or approving positions when they're grant funded. So the agency can get staff through the grant and then use the local match to do the capital, whatever's best for the agency. So just a couple points I wanted to make on that, and let me see if there's any questions from the TAC members. Thank you.
All right, any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I just, silence is awkward. I just don't want my silence to be interpreted in any way other than I very much support your efforts, Jeff, and thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, and let me say, I know it's a public meeting and all, but the relationships that we're building here and MetroPlan's ability to serve the member agencies in the way that they need is something that we are striving to do. So we're trying to listen and learn and then come back with these approaches that fit. So it is definitely good, especially when all I can see is a blank screen and a name, how stuff is being received. So I appreciate the verbal confirmation, Rick.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'll second that. Jeff and Dave and Rosie, thank you all so much for your work on this. This is great information.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jeff. With that, we will move on to our next item. That would be H, financial management policy and grant pursuit.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the TAC. This one flows pretty well. Everything that we just said in the last staff report gets to really kind of memorializing how MetroPlan is going to conduct itself. And this goes beyond people and personalities. This goes beyond Dave and Rosie and I, and goes to the extent of a policy for how we will pursue grants. So I put up on the screen here, it's in your staff report, really 4 very simple bullets, but I do want to talk them through with you. Number 1, that we are going to complete these grant pursuit worksheets for anything we intend to pursue. The second bullet, that we're going to share these worksheets with the appropriate parties, including the management committee and the TAC, like as we're doing now with the last example. And then we're going to secure appropriate signatures on the worksheets prior to applying for grants whenever possible. Don't think there's any surprises there. I'm guessing that stuff is all easy. I did go ahead and put in there, though, nothing in this policy will prohibit MetroPlan from pursuing grants when it feels it is in the best interest of MetroPlan or MetroPlan's member agencies. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was a tough one and if some of the TAC members wanted to talk about it. I will tell you on the front end, to me, it's really just a recognition that, we are an independent organization, and the expectation is that we're going to conduct ourselves appropriately. And that if we apply for a grant that becomes, MetroPlan applies for a grant somehow and an organization says, what did you do? We don't want that money. We weren't ready for it. Well, then we're responsible for it. And hopefully we would never do that. But what I want to prevent is a situation where I think, or my board thinks, and we agree, we really need a grant. And we want to pursue this, and a member agency says, we really don't want you to. And it comes down to autonomy. And just as I would say, if the city of Flagstaff wanted to pursue a grant and Coconino County said, look, I know you want to, but we don't want you to, at some point an organization just has to choose. So it might be that this bullet goes without saying. And, given that everything is new and we're building these relationships, I just wanted to be really candid about it and get it out there and see if there's feedback from TAC members. And maybe I'm thinking about this wrong. So I'm really open to hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is Rick again.
Go ahead, Rick.
Jeff, I appreciate the transparency. I do have a question. I think is it fair to assume that this bullet would only involve Metro Plan funding?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I appreciate the transparency. Thank you.
And can I answer that with more of an illustration?
Sure.
Because the last grant that we were just discussing, Metro Plan's not eligible to apply for that funding. The city is, or a county would have to apply. So if the member agency said, no, we don't want it, well, then you just don't push submit. So clearly, it's only funding that Metro Plan's eligible for that we would exercise this.
Thank you. And I'm not asking that be, that this bullet wording be changed in any way. I just thank you for that understanding and discussion.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Can I just ask a follow-up question for Jeff? So, and with the worksheet, do you identify the approval process? I get you're trying to get sign off by the respective stakeholder partner agencies for a grant worksheet. But within each agency, we all have our governance structure, board, councils. How is that incorporated into the approval process to pursue a grant?
So if I'm understanding the question, you're asking me, how do we know as Metro Plan that we've received the right approvals before proceeding?
Yes. Are you asking or at least to clarify what that approval process is that each agency says, I need to bring it to my board or my council by a certain date? Or
Yeah.
maybe they have pre-award or pre-approval to apply for grants, but not, in other words, potentially obligate or commit the funding if the grant is awarded.
Right. So I would answer, it's on a case-by-case basis, a grant-by-grant basis. So for example, in our discussions with ADOT, they made clear that this is a grant that would need to go to the director for signature, for approval, as it runs through their process. It's not something that maybe the DE could approve. And it's not something that would go to the state transportation board. And each grant might be different. So there might be a grant that we're looking to pursue and the NAPTA CEO can sign it, and maybe it needs to go to the NAPTA board or Mountain Line board. That's just information we would get from you, from each member agency, and then make sure we document it and do it the way the member agency needs it done. Does it answer it?
Yes, I see that on here. Approvals needed for.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
Oh, I would like a motion on this. No, I don't know. I don't need a motion. So thank you.
All right, no worries. Thank you, Jeff. Moving on to our next item, the Milton 180 CMP update.
Thanks. I'm gonna, Mr. Chairman, I just want to introduce John. I'm afraid that I asked Dan Gabbio, and for obvious and understandable reasons is not able to attend today. Dan said that John could do an update. So John, I've kind of put you on the spot on short notice, I'm afraid. Thank you for being there here though and sharing with us what's happening with Milton CMP.
Sure. Yeah, not a problem, Mr. Chair and TAC Committee. If we could bring up the PowerPoint I sent to Rosie earlier today, that'd be awesome. We've got about 20 slides, and I know our time is always tight, so we'll do a rapid fire review of the slides, and I'll just hit on a few high points that I think would be of interest to the TAC. And Dave Wessel's got a lot of knowledge on the project. Dave, feel free to stop me or jump in if you want to point something out. Looks like we're getting on the first slide there. We might need to scale that down a little bit. I'll just mention to you right off the bat that tonight is a virtual open house for the corridor master plan. And it starts at 6:30 and it goes till 8 p.m. And the project website has all the connections and the links that you would need. And there'll be presented on these slides as well. So again, 6:30 to 8 p.m. tonight. There'll be presentation boards of the different alternatives that you can look at your leisure. There's a presentation, this presentation here with the accompanying narrative. And there's a Q&A live from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m., which should be kind of interesting. That'll be overseen by our consultant project manager, Michael Baker, and then also Dan Gabbio, who's the ADOT project manager for this project. So I think there are two objectives tonight. They're trying to get people to participate in the public survey so we can get feedback on two evaluation criteria in particular, public acceptance and great streets. Those are two of the main goals for the survey. Can you go to the next slide, please?
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. Just give me just a second.
That's okay. If need be, I could bring it up on my screen. And yeah, is there any way to make that a little smaller or just to zoom out, I guess, so we can see the whole slide, Rosie?
That's the technical difficulty that I'm having. I'm not sure
okay.
why it's giant like this. So
Sure.
I'm trying to figure it out in the background.
Well, okay. The purple line here is the Milton Road CMP. That's good. The way you were showing it there just a minute ago. And I think everybody's familiar enough with the Milton Road Corridor Master Plan to know it goes from Forest Meadows up to Humphreys and terminates just a short distance past Humphreys. And then the US 180 Corridor Master Plan was the next line. The next colored line, and that open house will be tomorrow night from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. So you might want to attend both, get the flavor of both of them if you'd like. So once she gets the slide up, we can look at that. The study objectives, which is this slide here, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. The last bullet on there, again, we're trying to encourage public participation. There's the two evaluation criteria that haven't been really sought input on yet, are the great streets and the public acceptance. So we're trying to encourage people to take the survey. I took it this afternoon and it took about 15 minutes. I tried to give it the appropriate time to answer questions and rate each of the corridor alternatives and put in some narrative where they asked for it. So if you do want to take the survey, I'd give yourself maybe 15 or 20 minutes. You might do it in less, or you might want a little more. That survey will be live starting today and running through December 4th for the Milton Corridor Master Plan. And then for the US 180, that survey will be live either later today or tomorrow, and it also will go through December 4th. Rosie, you want to just go to the next slide? Okay, the study objectives, there were about 8 or 9 bullet points in there. I think just in general, the working paper 1 for this project came out in 2018. There's been public outreach, public stakeholder input. We've had the 2020 effort is going to be this virtual meeting and online surveys. A working paper 2 is now complete, and that is also available on the project website. They're fairly lengthy and involved. I don't think I've got anything else I can point out on this slide. The project partners, which you're not seeing on the bottom of this slide, is a group of, a fairly representative group. It includes NAPTA and Coconino County, NAU, Metro Plan, and ADOT, and Burlington Northern Santa Fe. And so Sorry about the slides here. Would it help if I tried to bring mine up, Rosie?
Yeah,
Okay,
that might be good.
okay. Let me know what I need to do so I can.
You should be able to share your screen now.
Okay. All right. And which button am I choosing? I'm sorry, I don't.
So you hit share screen at the bottom,
Okay.
and you should be able to select which screen. So, oh, there we go. Now, if you go to your slideshow,
Mm-hmm.
the slideshow tab at the top.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
There you go. Yours looks much better than mine did.
Okay, so anyway,
Sorry about
the
that.
backtracking. There's the overview. There's tonight's meeting objectives. Again, we're trying to get people to participate so we can evaluate public acceptance and Great Streets criteria, because those have really not sought public acceptance before. Here's the study objectives. I don't really want to read all of those. I think they're fairly self-explanatory. There's the project partners listed at the bottom of the banner there. Any comments so far, Jeff, or not Jeff, or Dave, or Ann, since you've been extensively involved in this? Feel free to.
Keep rolling, John, you're doing great.
Okay, keep moving. All right. This slide is pretty interesting. The tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 alternatives. I'm sorry about the quality of the graphic. It just basically explains the last 2 years of the project with the tier 1 coming up with the universe of system alternatives resulted in the working paper 1. There was an outreach effort, city council meetings, board of supervisor meetings. There was a community open house that, of course, was live at the time that resulted in the tier 1 alternative screening, and then it resulted in tier 2 alternatives. And so the tier 2 process, which has been ongoing, is now nearly complete, and we've moved into the tier 3 alternative evaluation, where we're going to be doing a public survey, which is live now, and then the alternative screenings. Once we get the input from the public, we're going to be able to come up with a preferred alternative. So if you look over on the tier 3 column, tonight is the community open house for Milton. And we've already held the city council meeting and the board of supervisor meetings. And tomorrow night is the US 180 open house. So the goal is to reach a preferred alternative. So there we go. This just gives you what the Milton tier 2 evaluation criteria were. There's quite a number of those. It gets fairly technical. Looks like we have about 16 criteria. And this resulted in traffic modeling and coming up for, it was an exercise that really kind of approached the sunset year of 2040. And we considered different lane configurations. I'm kind of getting into your realm here, Dave. Do you want to add anything on this?
No, I think many of the people in the room are familiar with the process, so carry on.
So it's not brand new. Okay. This slide is the tier 2 results. It shows the ranked alternatives, those that were ranked first, second, third, and 6th, and then 2 of the alternatives that were eliminated. I don't know if you can see this with enough detail, but again, if you have familiarity with the project, you can see the cross sections and the different evaluation criteria results for each of the alternatives. Just make a note that at the top of the slide is the no build and the no build plus. And no build is basically just leaving it with the 2 travel lanes in each direction and the center way, 2-way left turn lane, no bike lane, and then 5 to 6 foot sidewalks. The no build plus is the existing roadway conditions, but also with select enhancements like bike and pedestrian facilities, improvements with limited impacts to right-of-way, and some ADA improvements. So a lot of information on this slide. Here we go, Tier 3 evaluation criteria and weighting. Again, hopefully this has got, this is fairly familiar to the people looking at this slide. And the yellow highlighted boxes are the 2 criteria that we're seeking public input on this survey. So public acceptance and community character. I think that community character could perhaps be used the term great streets. I know we've used both terms before.
That's right, Joe.
So, yeah. And this gives the public weighting survey results and the project partner weighting survey results. So next slide. Okay. Here we go. Milton Tier 3 results. You know, Dave, I really like the way you explain this. Could you explain this one for me?
Oh, I can do my best. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
So one of the categories is traffic operations, and one of the criteria under that is travel time. So they looked at it in both the AM and PM peak hour and in the northbound and southbound directions. And when you see it in green, and I can actually see this in green and red, surprisingly. When you see it in green, it shows an improvement. And when you see it in red, it actually shows where things got worse compared to the no build. And so you can see the no build at the top, and then the totals on the far right are kind of the balance of those things, 2 directions. So you can see that it was very difficult, if not impossible, to get this 10 pounds of sugar in a 5-pound bag and get traffic operations improved. So without running through all the numbers, you can see those there. That help, John?
Yeah, thank you, Dave. And I know I think the takeaway was that traffic modeling results indicated that all of the build alternatives would perform worse than the no build in the southbound AM peak and in both directions in the PM peak. So, okay, I think we've described that one. Thank you, Dave.
Yep.
And let's see, this one's got the Tier 3 results. This is a summary version of the Tier 3 analyses. Public acceptance and community character are blank here because we need to get those from the surveys. Hopefully this is showing you enough on the screen. Whoops, sorry about that.
Yeah, John, if I may, this
Yeah,
allows
go ahead,
you,
Dave, please.
yeah, this allows the public to compare how each alternative works under the category. So it's hopefully a pretty quick read, so you can see, like we were just looking at traffic operations, or one element of it. And when you look at them in total, you can see that the spread across the alternatives. And I'll just bring it to everybody's attention. When you look at public acceptance and community character, it's about 20 6%, just over a quarter of the total score. And right now, the scores at the bottom, you can see they're still pretty tight. So a 25% influence, it's going to be really curious to see what the outcome is.
Right. Yeah, and then also the bottom row just shows the rank, the very bottom row there. You have to kind of look for it, but you know, the no build was number 1, no build plus number 2, et cetera. So again, thanks, Dave. And let's see. Oh, look at that. Those are the things we still need, the little magnifying glass. Cool. Okay, now this one had a little bit more detail. This one actually listed all of the 16 criteria and the 7 modes or 7 different categories. So if you want that level of detail, you can kind of take a peek here and see what each one of these categories consist of. And again, it compares the 6 alternatives, gives the weighted scores, and at the very bottom, it'll give the aggregate score. And like David just explained, they're pretty tightly grouped. And then finally, the rank of each alternative at the bottom row. So a lot of information on that one. All right, here we go, Milton Road. This is a little simpler table here. This is just going to show the preliminary tier 3 results showing the tier 3 score and rank for each alternative. So that's kind of that last table made in a little bit simpler representation here. Okay. The no build tier 3 results. A little more detail here. The no build alternative rank number 1 with the highest score. And this one just shows a little bit more of detail on the cross section. And list the right of way as well. Okay. No build plus, a little bit more detail on that. Okay. If anybody wants me to, stop on one of these, I'm just going to go ahead and go through each one of these. There's the 6A tier 3 results. It's got a little bit wider right of way, obviously. A lot more going on this one. Okay, 6B. And alternative 5. Alternative 13. And then we're going to get into the display boards. And again, this is something you'd see on the presentation tonight. There's an awful lot of information in here. This gives you the different categories that each display is going to have. There's a lot of detail in here. It shows the rank with the little meter here at the bottom of each one. Levels of service, travel time, network delay, bicycle comfort index, pedestrian comfort index. A lot of information. This one is a lot to chew on.
John, can I ask a question about that?
Yeah, please do.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could, when I look at expand travel modes, I'm just trying to understand what this is saying. Is it saying that in 2040, with the no build alternative, the pedestrian comfort index will be 8.0 or in the green?
That's a little technical for me there.
Okay, fair enough.
Jeff, this is Dave, and what's not shown on this board is which alternative we're looking at. So this is just to illustrate the type of information that will be on the display boards for each alternative.
Okay. Illustrative, thank you.
Thank you there. Thanks for the explanation. Appreciate it, Dave. And here's more, yet there's more. So here's more of the information you're going to see on the boards. And again, this is not specific to any one alternative, but I think it's showing you what the different criteria that are being reviewed. So you've got cost, implementation, right-of-way impacts, and air quality, Title VI impacts, neighborhood impacts, and implementation opportunities. Okay, and that's just basically saying where you can get additional information. So I'd encourage people to watch tonight's presentation or get on and see how it's going. Maybe take the survey. The survey will be live through December 4th, and the presentation, and which is got this PowerPoint with a nice recorded narrative, runs about 32 minutes. The one tomorrow night for the US 180, I think that runs about 24 minutes. So you can click on it, listen at your leisure, and it's got a lot better flow to it than my presentation here. But again, I just encourage you to jump in there and see how it goes. And there'll be a live Q&A tonight from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. And I believe that format will be, people are going to be entering questions in the chat, and then our ADOT PM and consultant PM will be answering those questions live. So,
Mr. Chair, I have a question for John. This is Dave.
yeah, Dave.
Yeah, so I missed the tail end of our last public involvement subgroup meeting. As partners, and many of us in the Zoom room today are partners in that process. Do you know what the expectation is of us, especially during the Q&A time? I plan to monitor this, but I really don't know what my role, if anything, is.
I don't believe that, other than Dan Gabbio, the ADOT PM, and Kevin Kugler, the consultant PM, and then the consultant has a couple of other staff that are going to help them monitor that live chat. I'd ask that as well, Dave, and I believe they've got it handled. So I don't think that there's any additional assistance that's needed from any of the partners.
Okay.
And I think
that's great
if
to
there's
know.
questions that need further follow-up or have to be, put in a parking lot, they're going to follow up later. But I have a feeling it'll be pretty good participation tonight, and they'll be fairly busy. But I believe when I asked Dan the question yesterday, he and Kevin were going to monitor that chat and provide the responses.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. So thank you for helping me on that, Dave and Rosie, and I'll stop sharing my screen now unless somebody wants to go back and look at a slide again.
Mr. Chair, I also have a question, if I may.
Of course, go ahead, Rick.
Thank you, John. I appreciate the presentation. Dave, Wessel, I had the exact same question, so thank you. Another point that I would like to raise from the city perspective, and it's a question I do not expect an answer to right now, but the question is, how come ADOT hasn't developed an alternative that would show better improvements to congestion on Milton and accommodating all the great street components? Yeah, I had the same thought when that question came up as an engineer. So I think we should all be prepared for some type of answer on that. Because the answers I've provided, being involved with the process, dare I say, have not been received warmly.
Yeah, Rick, this is Dave, Mr. Chair, if I may have a brief response to that.
Go ahead, Dave.
At our, I can't remember which, if it was a full partner meeting or if it was the public involvement meeting, but Dan Gabbio made reference to the potential for a hybrid. And I won't lay out all the reasons, and you may be able to, just based on your involvement to date, Rick, figure them out. I think a hybrid has an opportunity to meet the objectives as you laid them out. And part of that would be not widening the whole length, and that would lower the volume of traffic, which would influence traffic performance. So that may play out in the process somehow.
Okay, fair enough, Dave. I was stuck with an answer, and again, I've been involved quite a bit, but stuck for an answer, but also appreciated the question.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. Good point.
Any other comments, questions?
I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that presentation, John.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the input and Dave's help again. Thank you.
All right. With 13 minutes left, let's move on to our next item. That would be J, future build grant applications. Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to share my screen. It's a, this should be in your packet as well. We've covered a lot of ground on grants, both talking about the technology deployment grant as well as the grant pursuit policy. As Jeff mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we went for a build grant several years for 4th Street. That has ship has kind of sailed, I think, with the successful opening of the 4th Street Bridge. ADOT's no longer a partner. That's a big chunk of contribution on the match. And so the question is, as we explore pursuit of another build grant, and not saying that we will definitely go for one, but what should that project be? And just want to put before you several alternatives here, and at least from my perspective, how well they meet the criteria in the build grant as we know it. And I believe the build grant next year will be the same again because it's been extended through continuing resolution. And again, because of the change in administration, there may be changes in the delivery. But here's the projects, and most of you are familiar with them. So 4th Street, including the east part of John Wesley Powell, 4th Street, you know, so this is from really the bridge south, and all of John Wesley Powell clear to the airport. Bike and ped core improvements in the downtown area, including some of the grade separated improvements. Lone Tree Corridor plus the airport piece of John Wesley Powell, maybe the Milton Road underpass, and possibly the Camp Navajo traffic interchange. This would be a new interchange to the west, identified in the I-40 initial DCR. And for those of you who receive the Acona newsletters or little news blips that Gail Jackson puts out, the 3,000 acres of industrial park is very close to the finish line in terms of federal approval to release that. As far as our local priorities, you know, the bike and ped core improvements would come up at the top, and then there's some planning improvements that we might look at. As I looked across these criteria, probably the bike and ped improvements, Lone Tree Corridor and Lone Tree Corridor, including the airport, would be the best candidates in my estimate in terms of meeting the criteria. I'm going to stop there. I know we're kind of short on time, but see if there's any initial reactions from the TAC to that list.
Discussion?
Mr. Chair, Rick again. Have we heard back on the build grant we submitted for? I think Jeff may have mentioned that earlier on, so I apologize.
Mr. Chair, Rick, yes, we did. One of the, we were not successful, and one of the successful projects was a bridge over Tonto Creek, where there's been several fatalities in recent years. So a much needed project in rural Arizona.
I thought that was last year's cycle. So we're still,
That was down in Yavapai County on the Verde.
oh, it was.
Yeah.
I believe that was 2 years ago, wasn't it? Because
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Right.
the one in between I thought was the rail yard down in Queen Creek.
Perhaps. But I'm pretty sure Tonto was this year, and it might be Queen Creek as well. I mean, the Arizona received 2 this year.
Well,
Hey,
Tonto
Dave, this
was
is Ed.
last
I can confirm all of that. 18 was Verde, 19 was that the rail yard in Pinal County, and now 20 is the Tonto.
Thank you, Ed.
So do we have a pending application yet for another award or not?
No, there's no more applications out there. And so the question, do we want to pursue a
Oh, okay.
new build grant? And the build grant is up to $25 million, I believe, at the upper end. So in terms of offset of federal costs, we have, I think, a good potential to do that. And so something to look at. The build grants are much more involved than, say, the technology deployment grant, where in the technology grant, you just need to outline your benefits. In the build grant, you really need a full-blown benefit cost analysis, and so may need a consultant to assist with something like this.
Any further comments or questions?
Yeah, actually a follow-up to Dave. This is Anne. So Dave, on that point, well, first of all, I definitely as a partner support considering a build grant and planning for a strategy to meet the future deadline of a NOFA. And I can't see, I mean, I like how the priorities, how you've looked at the criteria, and I think Mountain Line would probably be in agreement that bike and ped would be a good package, a competitive package. I guess my question with that strategy and the grant worksheet pending your board's approval, looks like this build grant would be a good test run on using the grant worksheet process. Yeah, I guess the timing of needing a consultant though, could potentially, you might need to really start thinking about that already if the grant will come out next spring.
Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question or the comment. And yeah, similar to what we talked about earlier, we really do need to get a jump on this if we're going to pursue a build grant. And especially if that includes procurement of a consultant to put this together. So trying to reach a conclusion on which grant, which project to go for. And certainly we can develop, at least from an outline perspective, maybe the top 3 to flesh those out a little bit more, start maybe filling out draft grant application pursuit sheets, and then coming back to this group to see if there's a interest in one or the other alternatives, and certainly open to ideas for other projects that somebody might think is eligible.
Thank you, Dave. Anyone else? Any further discussion? All right. With 4 minutes left, that takes us to item K. And that is the McConnell Improvements Project Update. Jeff?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the TAC, I just put this item on the agenda at Mountain Lion's request. Anne?
Thanks, Jeff. In the 3.5 minutes I have left, I want to introduce Kelly Davis with NAU, partner on this project. And really this, we requested, this is a follow-up to a discussion we had earlier in the year when Andrew Iacona was the NAU representative on TAC. We presented kind of the potential concept of a roundabout at Pine Knoll and McConnell. We got feedback from this group to come back with more detailed traffic analysis. And since that time, we worked with NAU and WLB to develop a traffic study that looked at the larger impacts potentially of the project. And I guess to be brief, what we're looking for from TAC at this point, and I believe City of Flag and ADOT have or should be receiving the final study, the closeout memo for the traffic study that we found. I mean, there's no surprise that there are interconnectivity between the ADOT ramp and Beulah intersections, and there's some takeaways in the memo that was included in your TAC agenda item, but the full traffic study is available. Anyone here does not have direct access to it. What we're looking for really from NAU and Mountain Line's perspective is, we only had enough funding to kind of do some preliminary engineering on this, and NAU at this time does not have additional funding, nor does Mountain Line, to carry this all the way to final design, let alone construction. And as we got into the analysis, it is a regional impact type of project on the ADOT ramp and at the Beulah intersection. And so we'd like to hear from this group on considering this project in the mix of regional projects in the future for transportation planning and funding strategically in the future. So Kelly, do you want to add anything else?
You pretty much summarized the closing memo. I'm looking at it right now, and I think that the last line in this closing memo is when the project is resumed, regional partnerships will be critical to a successful outcome. So, that's just where we're leaving it. There were some questions that ADOT was asking for additional information, and so was the city. And we just kind of ran out of scope on that. And so we think we're leaving it in a good state that it could be picked up, when the future agreements are reached, and could move forward at that time with a couple of outstanding questions that involve, more participation probably from ADOT and the city as it gets into more of their jurisdictions.
So with that, maybe I could ask Jeff Bowman was, reviewed, and unfortunately Nate's not here today. So he was involved with the review with Steve Oates, the regional traffic engineer. So Jeff, do you have any comments?
Sure, with the remainder of the last minute of the meeting. No, yeah, thank you both for expanding the scope to look at those traffic impacts for both ADOT and the city. We really appreciate that. We were feeling a little bit left behind on that first phase. So the second phase was really good. I think it's not easy or clear how we're going to move forward, but we do have a much better understanding of the options available to us at the ramp, mainly at the ramp and at the two NAU intersections. So no, I want to thank you guys for putting that effort in. I wish there were funding available because it would be a great project to move this forward, but just not quite yet.
Thanks, Jeff. And then I guess really kind of turning it back to Metro Plan in terms of the regional transportation planning, maybe you can let me know what you would need from NAU and Mountain Line to kind of keep this project in the hopper for consideration, and what kind of information you need for that.
Thank you all. Great discussion.
This is Dave. A quick response, and then we'll maybe turn it to Jeff and Nick to take us home here. So we went through I thought, a pretty solid prioritization process with you all. Probably going close to a couple of years ago, that helped us identify and set our priorities for a work program. And as we introduce new projects into the hopper, maybe what we can do is shorten the list to the, kind of the upper third or whatever, throw some new projects in the hopper and work back through those priorities so we can get a sense of where a project like this would stand. And we'll take that under consideration. So I think, Mr. Chair, turn it back to you.
Thank you. We have no further discussion on that in the interest of time. Jeff, are you okay if we skip items L through N?
Yes.
Okay. That will bring us to closing business. Are you okay if we skip item A?
Yes.
Thank you. For item B, our next scheduled TAC meeting will be on January 27th at 1:30 p.m. We'll be on Zoom as well. We will see you all there. And with that, I adjourn this meeting at 3:33 p.m. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Morning,
everybody.
Chair.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Good afternoon.
See you later.